Welcome to Monk's Temple. Settle in, wherever you are. Let the weight of the day begin to soften. Let your eyes grow gentle. Let your breath find its own natural rhythm, in and out, like the quiet tide of a hidden sea. Tonight, we are not here to acquire anything. We are not here to become someone new. We are simply here to remember. To remember a truth that sits beneath the noise, like the deep, still floor of a forest lake. Let us begin by painting a picture with a story. I want to tell you about a blacksmith I met many years ago, in a village nestled in the hills. His forge was always hot, the air thick with the scent of coal and iron. He was known for one thing, making the most exquisite, intricate locks. Locks for treasure chests, for gates, for secret doors. People would come from miles around, bringing their most valued possessions, asking him to create a lock that could keep them safe. He would study their faces, listen to their fears of thieves and loss, and then he would set to work. One day, a man brought a small, plain wooden box. It contained no jewels, no gold, only a bundle of old, fragile letters. "These are my heart," the man said. "I need a lock that can keep them from being stolen, from being lost, from ever leaving this box." The blacksmith worked for a week, forging a lock of such complexity it was a work of art itself. Tiny gears, multiple keyholes, mechanisms within mechanisms. He presented it to the man, who wept with gratitude and paid him handsomely. Years later, the blacksmith was traveling and passed through the man's town. Curious, he asked after him. A neighbor shook his head sadly. He became a recluse, the neighbor said. He was so afraid of someone picking the lock, he never left the house. He'd just sit in his room, staring at the box. The letters inside, they were from his wife, who had passed. But in guarding the box, he stopped living. He died in that room, with the locked box on his lap. The blacksmith walked away, his heart heavy. He realized he hadn't forged a lock to protect treasure. He had forged a prison for a living man. The man wasn't afraid of losing the letters. He was terrified of the grief they contained. And the lock, the beautiful, complex lock, didn't keep the grief in the box. It sealed the man inside his own fear. We do this. We are master blacksmiths of our own hearts. We see something precious, a connection, a love, a hope, and immediately, our mind starts forging locks. Locks of overthinking, if I say this, will they stay? Locks of control, if I can just manage every interaction. Locks of clinging, I must hold this so tightly it can never leave. We build elaborate, exhausting mechanisms to secure what we love, believing we are protecting it. But love is not a static thing to be locked in a box. It is a living current. A lock doesn't protect the current, it dams it, stagnates it, and eventually, the one holding the key finds themselves trapped in a room with a relic, while life flows on outside. The suffering isn't in the potential loss. It's in the desperate, sweaty labor of lock forging. It's in the small, airless room we build around ourselves and call it safety. If the sound of this space, of this unpacking, resonates with you, consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. It's a simple way to leave a lantern lit on the path, so you can always find your way back to this quiet reflection. Now, let's talk about a different kind of treasure. Not one you lock away, but one you carry openly. Imagine you are walking through a sun-dappled forest. You have a pouch at your side. As you walk, you pick up beautiful things, a perfectly shaped pine cone, a smooth stone warmed by the sun, a bright yellow leaf. You place them in your pouch. They are yours, collected in your journey. They bring you joy. Now, imagine you come to a clearing where another traveler rests. You feel a connection. You want to share your joy. So you reach into your pouch and you offer them the smooth stone. Look, you say, feel how the sun has kissed it. The traveler may take it, admire it, and hand it back. They may simply smile and say, yes, it's lovely. Or they may not even look up from their own rest. What do you do? If your sense of worth, of joy, was tied to their reception of the stone, you are in trouble. If you need them to take it, to validate its beauty, to confirm your taste in stones, then the offering ceases to be a gift. It becomes a request for a receipt. Please sign here to prove I have good stones. But if your joy in the stone is complete within you, if you felt its smoothness, you saw its color, and that experience was whole, then the offering is just an extension of that fullness. Their response doesn't add to or subtract from the stone's inherent beauty, or from your capacity to find beauty. Your pouch remains full, because your ability to perceive and appreciate is the real treasure. You are the forest walker, not the merchant of pine cones. I knew a woman who was a brilliant chef. She would spend days creating magnificent, thoughtful meals for her partner. But her happiness was utterly dependent on his reaction. If he took a bite and his eyes lit up with praise, she soared. If he ate it quietly, or was distracted, she crumbled. Her cooking, an act of creativity and nourishment, became a fragile performance, an exam she needed to pass to feel she was worthy of love. One evening, he was called away for work just as she was about to serve an elaborate dish. She sat at the table, the beautiful food growing cold, and felt a despair that was far deeper than disappointment over wasted effort. It felt like her very soul had been rejected. In that dark moment, a strange clarity arose. She served herself a plate. She sat alone in the quiet kitchen. She tasted the food. And she realized, with a shock, that it was extraordinary. The flavors were nuanced, the textures perfect. She had been so focused on being the source of his pleasure, she had completely disconnected from her own capacity for pleasure, both in creating and in tasting. Her joy had been outsourced. That night, she began the long journey of cooking for the love of the craft, for the meditation of the chop and the sizzle, for her own palate. The meals became even better. And her relationship, it changed. It became less charged, less frantic. She was no longer feeding him from a place of hunger for validation. She was sharing from a place of genuine, personal abundance. The gift became real only when it stopped being a transaction. This is the first, gentle untangling. Your worth, your joy, your peace, these are not offerings to be placed in another's hands for appraisal. They are the innate capacities of your own being. You are the forest, the walker, and the pouch. When you look to someone else to tell you the value of what you carry, you give away your entire journey. You stand in the clearing, holding out your pine cone, waiting for a grade, while the sun moves across the sky and the birds sing songs you don't hear. Let's go deeper, to a place of elemental truth. Think of a tree in a storm. The wind howls. The branches are not still. They are not rigid. They sway, they bend, they dance with a wild, chaotic energy. Some small twigs may snap and fly away. The leaves rustle in a frantic chorus. But the trunk? The trunk holds. Its roots drive deep into the earth. It moves, but it does not uproot. It is in a dynamic relationship with the storm, not a fight to the death. After the storm passes, the tree stands. It is changed, perhaps a branch is missing, the arrangement of its leaves is different, but it is fundamentally, unshakably, still a tree. It may even be stronger for having weathered the force. We are so often like the small, desperate twig, believing we must either be perfectly still and unaffected, an impossibility, or be torn completely away and destroyed. We don't recognize the option of the trunk. The option of deep roots and flexible strength. When the winds of another person's ambivalence, their distance, their changing feelings, blow through our life, we often panic. We try to become a stone wall against the wind. We brace, we harden, we demand the wind stop. Or, we become the twig, letting every gust define our direction, feeling we are at the mercy of forces that will inevitably break us. But you are neither the wall nor the twig. You are the tree. Your roots are your connection to your own values, your own breath, your own silent knowing. Your trunk is your core sense of self, your history, your resilience. The winds will blow. Let them. Let the branches of your emotions sway. Let the leaves of your thoughts rustle. You do not need to stop the storm to survive it. You only need to remember your roots, and trust your trunk to hold. The person who cannot choose you is not a storm to be defeated. They are a weather pattern passing through your ecosystem. You can allow them to pass, without believing their passage means you must fall. I remember a time of great personal turmoil, when a foundational relationship in my life shifted irrevocably. I felt uprooted. I spent nights mentally replaying conversations, trying to find the moment I could have said something different to change the outcome. I was trying to mentally rebuild the weather of the past, to reroute the storm. It was exhausting. One morning, utterly drained, I went for a walk in a grove of old oak trees. I leaned my back against one, feeling its rough, immutable solidity. I looked up. High above, the very top branches were swaying in a breeze I couldn't even feel on the ground. And it struck me, the tree's reality wasn't just in the swaying branches. Its reality was also in the profound stillness of the trunk against my spine, and the unimaginable depth of the roots below. I had been identifying only with the highest, most vulnerable branches, the part of me that was tossed by every word, every silence. I had forgotten my own trunk. My own roots. From that day, when the mental storms would come, I would place a hand on my own chest, feeling the solid beat of my heart, the rise and fall of my breath, my trunk. I would imagine roots descending from my feet, connecting to the earth of the present moment. I didn't try to stop the stormy thoughts. I just stopped believing I was only those thoughts. I found my stability not in the absence of wind, but in the presence of my own deep ground. So tonight, as you listen, feel for your trunk. Feel for your roots. The story of your life is not written in the weather. It is written in your growth rings, each one a record of a season you endured, and lived through, and grew stronger for. This brings us to a quiet pond. A pond at dawn, perfectly still. The water is so clear it reflects the sky, the trees, the rising sun with mirror-like precision. Now, throw a pebble into the center. Plop. Ripple circles radiate out, distorting the reflection. The image of the sky shatters into dancing fragments. We are often like someone staring furiously at the disturbed water, shouting at the ripples, "Stop. Go back to how you were. I need to see the perfect sky." We want the pond of our life to be perpetually still, to reflect only peace, only certainty. And when a pebble, a harsh word, a rejection, a disappointment, is dropped into our center, we spend all our energy fighting the ripples. We want to smooth the water with our hands, which only creates more disturbance. We blame the pebble. We blame the person who threw it. We blame ourselves for being a pond in the first place. But the pond's nature is not to be still. Its nature is to respond. To receive impact and manifest it as movement. The ripples are not a flaw. They are the pond's truth in that moment. The still reflection was one truth. The rippling, fragmented one is another. Fighting the ripples is resisting the pond's very nature. The wisdom is not in stopping the water from moving. The wisdom is in watching the ripples with curiosity, not condemnation. Seeing how they spread, how they eventually dissipate, how the water, in its own time, finds stillness again. You are the pond. Your emotions are the water. Events are the pebbles. Your practice is not to become a pond made of concrete that no pebble can disturb. Your practice is to be a pond so deep and clear that you can accommodate the ripples without forgetting you are water. The reflection will be distorted for a time. That's okay. The sky hasn't gone anywhere. It's still above. The clarity will return. Not by your frantic smoothing, but by your patient allowance. There was a man, a teacher, who was known for his unflappable calm. Students would come to him with their crises, and he would listen, his face a pool of serenity. They wondered at his secret. One day, a student, in a fit of frustration over his own turbulent emotions, cried, "How do you make the water so still?" The teacher smiled. "I don't," he said. He then led the student to a large, deep ceramic jar full of water. "Look in," he said. The student saw his own agitated reflection. The teacher then took a wooden spoon and stirred the water violently. "Now look," he said. The student saw a chaotic whirl of shapes and colors, no clear image at all. "This is you," the teacher said. "You are identifying with the very top layer of water, where every stir causes chaos." He then asked the student to plunge his arm deep into the jar, down to the bottom. "What do you feel?" The student's eyes widened. "It's still. Completely still and cool down there." "That is also you," the teacher said. "You are not just the stirred surface. You are also the deep, undisturbed water. The storms happen at the surface. Your work is not to stop the wind from stirring. Your work is to remember the depth that remains untouched, and to learn to rest your awareness there. When you are caught in the ripples of anxiety, of longing, of heartache, see if you can imagine plunging your awareness down, beneath the stirred surface. Find the still, cool depth of your own being. The ripples are happening. Let them. But you are not only the ripples. You are the whole pond, from the frantic surface to the silent, dark bed below. Your peace lives in the depth, not in the temporary condition of the surface. We often speak of letting go as if it is an action we perform on something external. We let go of a person, a dream, a hope. But what if letting go is actually an internal shift of attention? What if it's not about dropping a heavy object, but about turning on a light in the room where you've been straining to see in the dark? You're not letting go of the object, you're simply seeing it for what it has always been, and in that clear seeing, your grip relaxes on its own. Imagine you are in a dim room, holding what you believe to be a priceless, fragile vase. You hold it with both hands, terrified of dropping it. Your muscles ache from the tension. You can't move, you can't do anything else, for fear of shattering this precious thing. Then, slowly, a dawn light begins to creep through the window. As the room brightens, you look down at what you're holding. It's not a vase. It's a simple, empty clay pot. Ordinary. Useful, perhaps, but not priceless. Not fragile. The moment you see it clearly, your hands naturally relax. Your shoulders drop. You might even let out a laugh. You didn't decide to let go. The letting go was the inevitable consequence of clear sight. You were never holding a vase. You were only ever holding an idea of a vase, in the dark. So much of our suffering is holding on to ideas in the dark. The idea that this person is your only chance at happiness. The idea that this outcome is necessary for your wholeness. The idea that their choice is a final grade on your worth. We clutch these ideas in the dim light of our fear and longing, and they feel so solid, so vitally important. The practice of awareness, of mindfulness, is the gradual opening of the shutter, the letting in of dawn. It is the gentle, patient looking. What are you actually holding? Is it a priceless vase, or a common pot? Is it love, or is it fear wearing love's clothing? Is it loyalty, or is it habit? Is it hope, or is it addiction to possibility? You don't have to force your hands open. Just bring in the light. Look closely. The truth will do the rest. I recall a student who was tormented by the end of a relationship. He had a narrative, she was the one, and I ruined it. This story was his fragile vase. He carried it with him everywhere, examining every crack, blaming himself for each one. He came to retreat, a walking monument to this idea. During a silent meal, he was staring into his bowl of soup, lost in his story. A fellow retreat ant, an older woman, without a word, reached over and gently tapped the side of his ceramic bowl with her spoon. Ting! The clear, resonant sound echoed in the quiet hall. He looked up, startled. She met his eyes and gave a tiny, knowing smile. In that moment, the ting cut through his mental noise. He looked down at the bowl. Just a bowl. The soup, just soup. The story in his head, just a story. The sound had been a moment of pure, unexpected clarity. It didn't solve his grief, but it showed him the container he was putting it in. He saw he was holding a simple, empty narrative bowl, not the sacred relic of his doomed destiny. His grip on the story of being the one who ruined it began, slowly, to soften. He started to see the relationship not as a singular, catastrophic event, but as a series of moments, choices, and human imperfections, on both sides. The vase became a pot. And a pot can be put down. This is where we will pause for tonight. We've touched the lock and the box, the forest and the pouch, the tree and the storm, the pond and the pebble, the dark room and the vase. We've begun to question what we're holding and why. This is not a call to be cold, to be unfeeling. It is an invitation to be clear. For in clarity, there is a kindness to ourselves that passion often obscures. Rest with these images. Feel your own breath, your own trunk, your own deep water. We will continue. As we settle back in, I invite you to notice the space between your thoughts. That gentle hum of silence that's always there, underneath the stories. Tonight, let's speak of maps and territories. We often carry a map of how life should be. A detailed, internal cartography of relationships, careers, and the timing of our happiness. We've drawn it with the ink of our hopes and the colors of our conditioning. Then, life unfolds as life does. Messy, unexpected, refusing to follow our careful lines. What do? We often stand in the actual, beautiful, wild landscape of our reality, staring furiously at our crumpled map, yelling, "This is wrong. The river isn't supposed to be here. This mountain is in the incorrect place." We suffer not because the landscape is barren, but because it doesn't match the paper in our hands. We'd rather argue with the territory than put the map down and look at the actual, breathtaking view. I think of an avid hiker I once knew. He planned a trek through a range of hills, studying maps for months. He knew every trail, every elevation point, every designated campsite. On the third day, a sudden landslide washed out his planned path. He stood before the raw gash of earth and rock, utterly frustrated. He pulled out his map, again and again, as if his frustration could redraw the geography. He spent hours trying to find an alternative that matched his pre-planned distances and scenery. The sun began to set. A local guide, who had been watching from a distance, finally walked over. He didn't look at the map. He looked at the hills, the sky, the lay of the land. He pointed to a faint, animal trail leading up a different ridge. "This way is longer," the guide said. "You won't see the views on your map. But you will see a valley of wildflowers that only blooms this week, and a waterfall that isn't on any paper." The hiker, exhausted and defeated, finally folded his map and put it in his pack. He followed the guide. That night, he didn't camp at the designated site. He slept in a meadow under a blanket of stars so thick it felt liquid. The sound of the unknown waterfall was his lullaby. He later said the detour, the unmapped part, was the only part of the journey he truly remembered. The map had given him an illusion of control. The landslide gave him the gift of reality, which was far more interesting. When someone doesn't choose you, it is a landslide across your planned path. Your map said, "This way to happiness." Reality has drawn a different line. You can sit at the edge of the rubble, mourning the trail that's gone, clutching your map of what should have been. Or, you can take a deep breath, put the map away, and look around. There is a whole, living landscape here. It contains other paths, other vistas, other forms of beauty you couldn't have planned for because you didn't know they existed. The end of a relationship, a hoped-for connection, is not the end of the journey. It is a forceful redirection onto a trail you didn't choose, but that may lead you to a version of yourself you didn't know was waiting to be met. This brings us to the idea of the guest and the host. Imagine your mind, your heart, your life as a house. Feelings come and go like guests. Joy arrives, bright and chattering. Sadness comes, quiet and heavy. Anxiety paces in the hallway. Loneliness sits by the fire. And then there is the guest named craving for that specific person, or longing for that specific outcome. This guest is demanding. It wants to rearrange the furniture. It wants to be fed constantly with your attention and your memories. It plays loud music of what if and if only that disturbs all the other guests. It claims it will never leave. What is your role? Are you a harried servant, running to meet this one guest's every demand, ignoring the care of the house itself and the other, quieter guests? Or are you the host? The calm, centered presence who opens the door to each guest, acknowledges them. Ah, I see you, loneliness. Please, come in. Sit. You are welcome for tea. But who does not hand over the keys to the house? The host knows that guests, by their nature, arrive, stay for a time, and depart. Even the most persistent, demanding guest eventually tires. The host's duty is not to eject the guests, nor to become enslaved to them. The host's duty is to maintain the house, to keep it clean, warm, and grounded. The house is your being. The host is your awareness. When you are lost in craving, you have abandoned your post as host. You have let one guest take over. You are in the kitchen, frantically trying to prepare a meal it will never actually eat, while the rest of the house grows cold and dark. The practice is to return to the foyer. To take a deep breath and remember, I am the host. This is my house. You walk into the room where craving is shouting. You say, with gentle firmness, I hear you. You are loud. But you do not make the rules here. You may stay, but you will not destroy the peace of this home. This is not repression. It is stewardship. It is the difference between being flooded by a feeling and observing a feeling. The guest doesn't disappear immediately, but it loses its power to dictate the atmosphere of your entire life. I remember a period of intense creative doubt. The guest of imposter syndrome had moved in, bringing all its luggage of fear and comparison. It commented on everything I did. That sentence is weak. That idea is unoriginal. I found myself tiptoeing around my own mind, trying to keep this guest quiet. My writing became stiff, forced. One morning, in sheer exhaustion, I did something simple. Instead of trying to write, I made a cup of tea. I sat in my chair. I said, internally, okay, imposter syndrome. You're here. I'm not going to fight you today. But I'm going to drink this tea. I felt its presence, a heavy, judgmental fog in the room. But I focused on the warmth of the cup in my hands, the taste of the tea, the light on the wall. I hosted the feeling without obeying it. After about 20 minutes, a strange thing happened. The guest got bored. Its commentary became background noise, then a whisper, then it seemed to wander into another room. The space in my mind cleared. I didn't write a masterpiece that day, but I wrote a few honest sentences. I had reclaimed my role as host. The house was mine again. Now, let's consider the sculptor and the clay. You have a block of clay, the raw material of your life, your emotions, your circumstances. You have a vision in your mind of a beautiful statue, the perfect relationship, the ideal state of being. You set to work, chiseling, smoothing, shaping. But clay has its own nature. It cracks in certain places. It resists certain forms. It contains impurities, pebbles you didn't expect. The vision in your mind fights with the reality of the material. Suffering is the sound of that fight, the grunt of effort, the frustration when a piece breaks off. You think, if only the clay were better. If only it would obey. But what if the wisdom lies not in forcing the clay to match the vision, but in letting the vision soften to meet the clay? What if the masterpiece isn't the statue in your head, but the form that emerges from a respectful dialogue between your intention and the truth of the material? When you are trying to sculpt another person into your vision of a partner, or sculpt a situation into your vision of security, you are at war with the inherent nature of the clay. They are who they are. The situation is what it is. The pebble of their ambivalence is in the clay. The crack of their unavailability is part of the material. You can exhaust yourself trying to carve around it, hide it, or wish it away. Or, you can pause. You can put down your tools of expectation. You can look at the actual block in front of you. Maybe the form it wants to take is different. Maybe the crack isn't a flaw, but a feature that gives the final form its character. Maybe the sculpture isn't a grand statue of coupled bliss, but a simpler, more truthful form of a person standing whole and alone, with the crack visible, honest, and integrated. A potter I admired taught me this. She would never begin with a rigid plan. She would center the clay on the wheel, feel its weight and moisture with her hands, and then begin to coax a form with it. The clay tells you what it can be, she'd say. If you try to make it into something it's not, it collapses. One day, a large piece of stoneware had a hidden air pocket. As she worked, it burst, creating a jagged tear in the side of a nearly finished vase. I gasped, thinking it ruined. She didn't. She stopped the wheel. She studied the tear. Then, with a calm focus, she began to work with the rupture. She widened it, smoothed its edges, and incorporated it into the design. The finished piece was breathtaking. The flaw became the focal point, a window into the interior of the vase. It was more beautiful, more interesting, than her original plan could ever have been. She hadn't just accepted the flaw, she had honored it, made it essential. Can you do this with the ruptures in your life? The person who left created a tear in the form of your future. Can you stop the wheel of frantic mental activity? Can you look at that empty space, not as a ruin, but as a new feature? What might this opening make possible? What interior part of you can now be seen? The sculpture of your life is never finished. The clay is always somewhat wet, somewhat malleable. You have the choice to fight the material or to collaborate with it. The latter requires humility, patience, and a deep trust that the form emerging, though unexpected, holds its own kind of wholeness. Let's shift to a different sense, sound. Imagine your mind is a vast, silent hall. Every thought, every worry, every memory of a conversation is a sound in that hall. A thought of anxiety is a sharp clang. A memory of rejection is a low, discordant gong. The repetitive story of, "Why didn't they choose me?" is a monotonous, grating drone. When you are identified with these sounds, you are like someone trapped in the center of the hall, being assaulted by the noise, covering your ears, trying to shout over it. It's overwhelming, cacophonous. Peace seems impossible. But what if you could move your seat? What if you could retreat to the edges of the hall, to a small, curtained alcove? From here, you can still hear the sounds. The clang, the gong, the drone. But you are no longer in the center of them. They are happening over there, in the space of your mind. You are here, in the alcove of awareness, observing them. They lose their power to disorient you. You can even begin to listen to them with a detached curiosity. Ah, there's the low gong of sadness again. It has a resonant quality today. This is the power of mindfulness. It is not stopping the sounds. It is changing your relationship to them. It is moving from being the one making the noise, or being crushed by it, to being the one listening to the noise from a place of quiet safety. I learned this from an old recording engineer. His studio was in a busy city. Outside was traffic, sirens, the din of urban life. I asked him how he could possibly record anything delicate with all that noise. He smiled and played me a recording of a single violin. The melody was crystal clear, pure, and heartbreakingly beautiful. I couldn't hear a single siren. The secret, he said, isn't in blocking out the noise. It's in the microphone's focus, and in the treated space between. He pointed to the thick walls, the baffles, the precise placement of the microphone. The noise is out there. The music is in here. My job is to protect the space where the music happens, and to point the microphone only at the music. Your awareness is that microphone. Your practice of presence, coming back to the breath, to the body, is the treated room, the baffles that protect your inner space. You cannot stop the external noise of life's events, or the internal noise of your thoughts about them. But you can choose where to point the microphone of your attention. You can protect the inner space where your own music, your peace, your clarity, can be heard. When the drone of, "Why don't they want me?" starts up, you don't have to amplify it by focusing on it. You can gently turn the microphone back to the breath. Back to the sensation of your feet on the floor. Back to the silent alcove of the observer. The noise doesn't disappear, but it fades into the background, where it belongs. This leads us to a reflection on time itself. We spend so much of our mental life in two places that don't exist, the past and the future. We replay the past like a film, editing, wishing for different lines, different outcomes. We pre-live the future, writing scripts full of anxiety or desperate hope. Meanwhile, the present moment, the only moment that is actually real, slides by unnoticed, like a rich landscape viewed from a speeding train. Our suffering is often the gap between the reality of the present and our mental occupation of a fictional past or future. Think of yourself as a reader, but you're holding the book of your life in a strange way. You're not reading the page that's open in front of you. You're either bent over, straining to reread a previous chapter, trying to change the words. Or you're leaning forward, squinting to read a chapter that hasn't been written yet, scribbling notes in the margins about what should happen. Your neck aches from the strain. You feel anxious and confused. The story makes no sense because you're not reading it where it is. The simple, radical act is to sit up straight. To look at the page that is open right now. To read the words that are actually there. This moment. This breath. This sensation. This is your life, happening now. The previous chapter is closed. Its ink is dry. The next chapter is blank. Your anxious scribbling on its pages is just that, scribbling. It has no power to determine the story. Only the choices you make on this page have any power. A friend, a recovered addict, shared his most pivotal insight with me. He said in the depths of his addiction, his entire existence was either in the shame of the last fix or the craving for the next one. The present was just a painful blur of withdrawal he needed to escape. His turnaround began in a rehab meeting where a counselor gave them a cheap notebook. Your assignment, the counselor said, is not to write about your past or your future. For 1 hour, I want you to write only about what you can perceive with your 5 senses, right now, in this room. My friend thought it was ridiculous. But he started. The chair is blue plastic. It's cold through my jeans. I hear a fan humming. There's a water stain on the ceiling tile that looks like a duck. My tongue feels dry. It was boring. Mundane. But as he filled a page with only present moment facts, something happened. The screaming shame and craving faded into a distant murmur. For that hour, he was just a man in a blue plastic chair, looking at a water-stained duck. He was present. And in that presence, he found a sliver of peace so profound it felt like a miracle. He realized he could always return to this page. The page of the present, when the other chapters became too loud. It was his anchor. Your anchor is here. Not in the analysis of why they left. Not in the fantasy of their return. Here. In the feeling of your lungs filling. In the weight of your body being held by whatever supports you. This is the ground of your being. All suffering is a form of temporal dislocation, a being somewhere else in time. Healing is the gentle, repeated return to now. We'll close this part with the image of a lantern in a fog. When a dense fog rolls in, it's disorienting. Shapes loom and vanish. Distances are impossible to judge. You can't see the path ahead, and the path behind is swallowed up. Fear arises. You might start running, hoping to break through the fog, which only leads to exhaustion and potentially danger. Or, you might freeze, waiting helplessly for the fog to lift. The wise traveler does something else. They stop. They take out a lantern. They light it. The lantern doesn't dispel the fog for miles. It can't show you the destination or clear your entire path. What it does is create a small, warm, clear circle of light immediately around you. In that circle, you can see your own feet. You can see the next step. You can see enough ground to stand firmly. You are safe within your sphere of light. You wait, you breathe, you trust that as you take the next visible step, the circle of light will move with you, revealing the next step after that. Your craving for certainty, for a guaranteed future with someone, is a craving for the fog to lift completely. You want to see the whole path, to know exactly where it leads. Life rarely offers that. The fog of uncertainty is part of the journey. Your awareness, your mindfulness, is your lantern. It doesn't answer the big, frightening questions. Will I be alone forever? Did I mess up my one chance? It creates a circle of clarity around this moment. Right now, I am breathing. Right now, I am safe. Right now, I can choose to be kind to myself. You can take the next step from this place of present moment safety. The future will reveal itself step by step, lantern lit, not in one blinding, impossible revelation. So tonight, if you feel lost in the fog of a broken heart or a confused mind, don't demand the weather to change. Light your lantern. Come back to the breath. Feel the solid floor. See the circle of light around you. It is enough. For now, it is more than enough. We will continue to explore this path of gentle clarity. Allow your focus to soften, like morning light diffusing through a thin curtain. Tonight, let's speak of something fundamental yet often misunderstood, the difference between a wound and a story. When you experience rejection, loss, or indifference from someone you cared for, there is a clean, honest pain. It is the wound. It is the visceral feeling in the chest, the hollow ache, the raw tenderness. This pain is natural. It is the evidence that you cared, that you risked, that you are human. It is like the sharp sting when you graze your knee, immediate, bright, and real. But then, almost instantly, the mind steps in. It begins to weave a story around the wound. This happened because I am not enough. This means I am unlovable. They left because of my flaws. I will always be abandoned. This story is not the wound itself. It is a bandage made of fear and old beliefs, wrapped tightly around the injury. Over time, if we are not careful, we forget the original wound. We identify completely with the bandage, the story. We think the story is who we are. I am someone who is always left. I am inherently unworthy. The story becomes a cage, and we mistake the bars for our own bones. Healing does not mean the wound never existed. It means gently, patiently unwrapping the story bandage to let the wound breathe, to let it meet the clean air of awareness, so it can heal naturally, instead of festering under layers of narrative. The story is what perpetuates the suffering long after the initial injury. I remember a woman who came to the temple years ago. She had been through a painful divorce. The wound was real, grief for a shared life that had ended. But the story she told was, I am a failure at love. I am too intense, too much for anyone. I will die alone. She wore this story like a heavy coat, even on warm days. It colored every interaction. One afternoon, during a walking meditation, she was assigned to simply notice sensations, the crunch of gravel, the scent of pine, the feel of the breeze. For 20 minutes, she was just a body walking, sensing. There was no story, only direct experience. Afterward, she sat down and began to weep, not the hysterical tears of her story, but a quiet release. For those 20 minutes, she whispered, I wasn't a failure. I was just a person walking. The air felt cool. That was all. That moment of storyless presence didn't solve her divorce, but it showed her there was a her separate from the tale of failure. It was the first thread pulled on the tight bandage. So, tonight, if you are holding a story about why you weren't chosen, see if you can place it gently beside you for a moment. Don't fight it. Just acknowledge, this is a story I have been telling. Then, feel for the wound underneath. Not with analysis, but with compassion. Place a hand on your heart. Feel the simple, animal ache of disappointment. Breathe into that space. This is honoring the wound without empowering the story. The story says, this means something terrible about you. The breath simply says, this hurts. I am here with the hurt. This leads us to a powerful metaphor, the idea of the inner sanctuary. Imagine within you a room. It is a place of absolute quiet and safety. The walls are thick stone. No sound from the outside world penetrates here. This is your core, your essential being, untouched by the opinions, choices, or absence of any other person. In this room, there is a single, steady flame. It is the flame of your awareness, your presence. Now, outside this sanctuary is the bustling marketplace of your life. Here, all the dramas unfold. People come and go. Transactions of emotion happen. Praise and rejection are shouted like prices. Your attention is usually out here, in the market, getting jostled by the crowd, elated by a good deal, devastated by a loss. When someone doesn't choose you, it feels like a vendor has loudly refused to trade with you, and the whole market seems to laugh. You feel exposed, humiliated, empty. The practice, the path to peace, is remembering you have an inner sanctuary. It is cultivating the ability, moment by moment, to turn away from the noisy market and step back inside. To close the heavy door. To sit in the silence. To gaze at your own unwavering flame. In here, the market's verdict means nothing. In here, you are not a commodity to be chosen or rejected. You are the watcher of the flame. The stillness itself. You don't have to live in the sanctuary forever. You can go out into the market to engage, to connect, to love. But now you do so knowing you have a home to return to. You are not a homeless beggar in the marketplace, dependent on every scrap of attention. You are a visitor from a kingdom of inner peace. This changes everything. You can offer your wares, your love, your kindness, without desperation. You can receive a rejection not as a sentence of exile, but as a simple fact about that particular vendor's tastes on that particular day. It doesn't touch the sanctity of your inner room. I learned this not in a grand revelation, but in small, daily failures. I would get caught in the market drama, a perceived slight, a word of criticism, and my whole day would be ruined. I'd feel hot, agitated, wronged. Then I began a simple practice. Whenever I felt that hot agitation, I would, even if just for 3 breaths, imagine stepping through a stone archway into a cool, silent room. I'd imagine the market noise becoming muffled, then silent. I'd imagine my breath becoming the flame. It was just imagination, but the physiological shift was real. My heart rate would slow. The heat would dissipate. I was training my nervous system to know it had a refuge. Over time, the need to be chosen by everyone in the market lessened, because my sense of home was no longer out there. It was in here. Now, let's consider the concept of earning love. It is one of the most pervasive and painful stories. We believe love is a reward for good behavior. If we are kind enough, patient enough, helpful enough, attractive enough, successful enough, then we will earn the love and commitment we seek. This turns relationships into a subtle form of employment. We are constantly performing, submitting an invisible resume, waiting for our promotion to chosen one. But love, in its truest sense, is not a wage. It is not compensation for services rendered. It is a gift. It is a mutual recognition, a free flow between 2 wholes. The moment you believe you must earn it, you have already placed yourself beneath the other person. You have made them the judge and you the petitioner. This dynamic is inherently unstable and full of suffering. You will always be auditing your own performance, terrified of a bad review. Think of a wildflower blooming in a hidden meadow. Does it bloom to earn the sun's attention? Does it strain and struggle to be pretty enough for the rain? No. It blooms because it is its nature to bloom. The sun shines and the rain falls not because the flower has earned it, but because that is the nature of sun and rain. Your capacity to love, to be kind, to be authentic, this is your bloom. It is your nature. You do not do it to earn the sunlight of another's affection. You do it because when you are aligned, it is what you do. The right people will be drawn to your bloom, just as bees are drawn to the flower, not because the flower bribed them, but because of a natural affinity. And sometimes, the sun is behind a cloud, or the bee visits another flower. This is not a judgment on the flower's worth. It is the weather. It is the bee's journey. A student shared this insight after a long period of heartache. She had been in a relationship where she was constantly proving her worth. Cooking elaborate meals when she was exhausted, downplaying her own needs, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, all in an effort to be low maintenance and easy to love. She thought she was earning love through endurance. After it ended, she was burnt out and confused. During a period of forced solitude, she took up gardening. She planted a sunflower seed. She watered it, gave it sun, but mostly, she just let it grow. She didn't beg it to bloom. She didn't try to convince it to be a rose. One morning, a bright yellow face had opened to the sky. It was perfectly, simply, a sunflower. In that moment, she saw her own exhaustion clearly. I was trying to be a rose for someone who maybe didn't even like roses, she said. I forgot I was a sunflower. And trying to be a rose makes for a very tired, very confused flower. Her work became not about earning love, but about remembering her own seed nature and providing herself with the water and sun of self-care. The right connections, she found, appreciated sunflowers. This is a call to cease the audit. Stop adding up your sacrifices and waiting for the emotional paycheck. Your value is inherent. Your ability to give is a reflection of your own abundance, not alone expecting repayment. Give if it feels true, from your overflow. If you find yourself giving from emptiness, from a hope that it will fill you, pause. That is not giving. That is bargaining. Return to your own garden. Tend your own soil. Your bloom is not for sale. It is for you, first. And from that authentic flowering, you attract not employers, but fellow gardeners. Let's explore a related idea, the myth of closure. We believe we need something from the other person to be free. An explanation. An apology. A final conversation where they admit their faults or acknowledge our pain. We think, if I could just understand why, then I could move on. So we wait, stuck, for a piece of communication that may never come, or that if it comes, may never satisfy the hungry ghost of our why. But what if closure is not something you receive? What if it is something you cultivate within? What if it is the understanding that the why is ultimately irrelevant to your freedom? People's actions are a complex tapestry of their own history, fears, conditioning, and capacity. The specific thread of why they didn't choose you is woven into that private tapestry. Demanding they unravel it for you is asking them to do a psychological striptease they may be incapable of, or unwilling, to perform. True closure is the decision to stop waiting at the door of their understanding. It is the act of turning the key in your own lock, from the inside. It is saying, I may never know why. I may never have the last word. But I have the next step. And I choose to take it. Closure is built from your own bricks of acceptance, moment by moment. It is the quiet realization that you already have all the information you need. Their actions showed you their position. Their continued silence or distance is just more data in the same set. The story is over. You are the one who keeps rereading the last page, hoping it will change. Closure is gently closing the book and placing it on the shelf. The book doesn't disappear. It becomes part of your library, not the only book you own. A man once wrote hundreds of unsent letters to his former partner, trying to find the perfect combination of words that would bring understanding, that would make him feel understood. He filled notebooks. It was a form of mental imprisonment. One day, he took all the notebooks to a fire pit. He didn't burn them in rage. He lit the fire with a sense of ritual. As he fed the pages to the flames, he said aloud, "I release my need for you to understand. I understand enough. You are gone. I am here." He didn't feel euphoria. He felt a deep, clean sadness. And beneath that, a solid ground. The closure wasn't in the fire. It was in the act of releasing the need. The ashes were just ashes. The freedom was in his heart. If you are waiting for a message, a sign, an acknowledgement to feel free, see if you can offer that acknowledgement to yourself. I see that this caused me pain. I acknowledge my own resilience in surviving it. I grant myself permission to stop investigating a case that has no jury but me. You are the judge, and you can declare the proceedings adjourned. The gavel is in your hand. We'll end this part with the image of two mountains. You stand on the peak of your own mountain. It is your life, with its unique view, its weather, its ecology. Across a deep valley, you see another mountain, the person you desire or miss. For a time, perhaps, you built bridges, sent signals, felt a connection across the expanse. But now, the bridges are gone. The other mountain is silent, shrouded in its own clouds. You stand on your peak, shouting across the valley, "Why won't you answer? Come back to the edge. Look at me." Your voice echoes and fades. You are using all your energy trying to communicate with a landmass that is following its own geological rules. The suffering is in the shouting. The peace is in turning around. In looking at your own mountain. Exploring its slopes. Tending its fires. Planting gardens in its meadows. Discovering its hidden springs. Your mountain is vast and worthy of your full attention. The other mountain will do what it will do. You cannot control its erosion, its eruptions, or its silence. But you can become the master gardener, the wise hermit, the peaceful observer of your own domain. From the height of your own peak, fully inhabited, you may one day look across and feel not desperate longing, but a simple appreciation for the other mountain's form, from a respectful distance. Or you may not look at all, because the sunrise from your own eastern ridge is too breathtaking to miss. Your life is not happening on that other mountain. It is happening here, under your feet. Breathe the air of your own altitude. This is your home. Let the world outside soften into a gentle hum. Here, we go inward. Tonight, Let's speak of a force more powerful than clinging, more honest than hope, the power of respectful distance. Imagine you are holding a small, fragile bird in your hands. You love this bird. You adore its song, its delicate beauty. But you are afraid. You're afraid it will fly away. So what do? You close your hands. You make a cage of your fingers. At first, the bird is still. It sings a little, but its song is muffled. You can feel its tiny heart pounding against your palm. You think, I am keeping it safe. I am keeping it close. But the bird's nature is to fly. In your tight grip, it cannot breathe properly. It stops singing. It may even begin to peck at your skin, not out of malice, but out of a primal need for space, for sky. Eventually, holding it this way, you are not holding a bird. You are holding a terrified, struggling heart. And you are terrified too, because you can feel its life fading in your grasp, and you know if you open your hands, it will leave. This is attachment. It is the closed hand around what we love, motivated by fear of loss. It mistakes possession for protection. And it harms both the holder and the held. Love, in its wise form, is the open palm. It is holding the bird with hands cupped loosely, allowing it the freedom to stay or to go. It is understanding that the bird's true song can only be heard when it is free. If it chooses to sit in your open hand, that is a gift. If it flies, you bless its flight and remember the beauty of its temporary trust. The open hand may feel risky, but it is the only way to experience connection without suffocation. The closed fist guarantees only one thing, eventual numbness, and a song that dies. We do this with people. We are afraid they will leave, so we cling. We text too much, we demand reassurance, we silence parts of ourselves we fear they won't like, we try to mold ourselves into the perfect, static sculpture they will never want to leave. We are closing our hands around them. And we can feel their spirit begin to struggle. We can feel the life of the connection growing strained. We think, I must try harder to be perfect, to be what they want. So we close our hands tighter. It is a tragic misunderstanding. They are not struggling because you are imperfect. They are struggling because they cannot breathe. I knew two dancers, partners for years. Their early work was electric, full of spontaneous joy. As they became successful, one partner, let's call him Leo, grew fearful of losing the magic. He began to choreograph every second. He'd correct his partner's smallest, intuitive movements. Not that arm, the other arm. Not that expression, this one. He believed he was perfecting their art. But the dance became stiff, technical, lifeless. His partner, Maya, felt trapped. She was dancing in a cage of his expectations. One day, she simply stopped. She said, Leo, you are no longer dancing with me. You are using me as a mannequin in your own private performance. I can't breathe. She left the partnership. Devastated, Leo was forced to dance solo. At first, it was awkward. He had to listen to his own body's impulses, not direct another's. Slowly, the joy returned. He later said, I was so afraid of losing the duet, I killed it by trying to control it. Dancing alone taught me that connection is an offer, not a command. Years later, they collaborated again, briefly. This time, there was space. The magic flickered back to life, because both their hands were open. When you find yourself in the anxiety of clinging, ask yourself, is my hand open or closed? Am I trying to command a duet, or am I willing to dance alone, authentically, and see who joins in with their own free rhythm? Respectful distance is not coldness. It is the space between two stars that allows them to shine distinctly, yet be part of the same constellation. This brings us to a subtle but crucial distinction between being needed and being valued. We often confuse the two. We believe if someone needs us for their emotional stability, for their practical life, for their sense of worth, then we are secure. We have a role. We are indispensable. So we make ourselves needed. We solve their problems, manage their emotions, become the foundation of their world. It feels like love. It feels like being chosen, deeply. But need is a contract written in fear. It says, I need you so that I don't have to face myself. It is a form of spiritual outsourcing. When you build a relationship on mutual need, you are building a house on a foundation of two voids leaning against each other. It may stand for a while, but it is unstable. A strong wind of self-awareness, of personal growth, of change, can cause it to collapse. Value is different. Value says, I see you. I appreciate you. My life is enriched by your presence, but I am complete without it. It is a gift offered from wholeness to wholeness. Being valued is being chosen for who you are, not for the function you serve. You want to be the sunset someone admires, not the crutch they cannot walk without. One is inspiration, the other is burden. A brilliant therapist once shared her own lesson on this. Early in her career, she prided herself on being needed by her clients. She was available at all hours, took on their pain as her own, felt responsible for their healing. She burned out quickly, feeling resentful and drained. Her supervisor told her, "You are trying to be their oxygen tank. You will always run out of air. Your job is to be the guide who points them to the air that is already everywhere around them, their own breath, their own resilience." She shifted her practice. She became less needed and far more effective. Her clients began to stand on their own. And the relationships became cleaner, more respectful. They valued her guidance, but they didn't need to cling to her to breathe. Examine your connections. Are you playing the role of the oxygen tank, desperate to be needed? Or are you a fellow traveler, pointing out the view, sharing the path, but knowing everyone breathes their own air? Seek to be valued, not needed. And offer your own value from a place of fullness, not a hungry need to be necessary. Now, let's consider the architecture of waiting. When you are waiting for someone to choose you, your entire mental and emotional life is put on hold. You are like a traveler in a train station, sitting on your suitcase, staring at the arrival board, for a train that may never come. You don't explore the city outside the station. You don't unpack. You don't settle in. You just wait. Your life becomes the interval between checks of the board. This is a special kind of hell. It is the hell of potential, which is often more torturous than the hell of definite loss. Buddhist wisdom asks a piercing question. What are you waiting for, and who told you to wait? If you are waiting for external permission to be happy, for another person's decision to activate your life, you have handed over the controls of your one precious existence. The train station is your life. The city outside is also your life. The waiting is a choice, often disguised as loyalty or hope. I recall a woman who waited 7 years for a man to leave his marriage. He'd say, soon. When the kids are older. When things are calmer. She waited. She turned down other opportunities, moved to a city she didn't like to be near him, put her dreams in a drawer. Her friends called her patient. She called it love. One day, she saw a photograph of him with his family at a college graduation, his child's, not his. The look of uncomplicated pride on his face was a lightning bolt. She saw, clearly, that his soon was a myth. He was living his life fully. She was the one in the station, waiting. The next morning, she booked a trip she'd always wanted to take. She didn't send a dramatic letter. She just stopped waiting. On that trip, she met herself again, the self that loved adventure, that was curious, that didn't need a man's delayed promise to feel alive. The waiting had been a form of self-erasure. Choosing to leave the station was an act of self-resurrection. Your life is not a waiting room for someone else's decision. It is the main event. Every moment you spend in anxious anticipation is a moment you are missing of your own unfolding story. You can respect someone's process without making their indecision the centerpiece of your existence. Put down the suitcase. Walk out of the station. The city is alive, and it is yours to explore. The train may still arrive one day, but you will no longer be a desperate passenger. You will be a vibrant resident who can choose whether or not to get on board. This connects to a deeper, more spiritual idea, the concept of spiritual dignity. Dignity is not pride. It is not arrogance. It is an inner alignment that says, I will not participate in my own diminishment. It is the quiet understanding that you are a sovereign being, and to beg, to cling, to shrink yourself is a violation of your own sovereignty. Imagine you are a mountain spring, clear and cold, bubbling up from the deep earth. Your nature is to flow, to give water, to reflect the sky. Someone comes to your spring. They do not drink. They stand there and say, prove to me you are water. Show me you are worth drinking from. What does the spring do? It does nothing. It continues to bubble. It continues to reflect the sky. It does not jump out of its basin to splash them. It does not try to convince them of its wetness. It simply is. If the person chooses not to drink, they walk away thirsty. The spring's worth is untouched. Its dignity is in its consistent, authentic nature. When you beg for attention, for clarity, for love, you are the spring trying to leap into the traveler's cup. You are abandoning your own nature to prove your worth to someone who may not be thirsty for what you offer. Spiritual dignity is the practice of staying in your basin. Of continuing to be clear, to be yourself, to flow. The right people will see the water, will feel its invitation, and will bend to drink willingly. The others will pass by. And that is not a reflection of the spring, it is a reflection of their thirst, or lack thereof. A master calligrapher once told me, when I teach, I do not chase the student. I make the ink available. I demonstrate the stroke. I create the quiet space. The student must come to the brush with their own desire. If I chase them, my energy becomes desperate, and the ink loses its clarity. The art cannot be forced, only invited. Your heart is the same. Do not chase. Create the quiet space of your own integrity. Be the clear ink. The right connections will come to the brush. We must also talk about the stories we inherit, the invisible scripts that run in the background of our minds. Love is sacrifice. You have to fight for what you want. If you love someone, you never give up on them. These can be beautiful sentiments in context, but without wisdom, they become licenses for self-martyrdom. They can convince us that suffering in the name of love is noble, that endurance in the face of indifference is strength. But there is a profound difference between fighting for a shared vision alongside someone, and fighting against their apathy to maintain a connection. The first is partnership. The second is a siege of a vacant castle. You may eventually storm the gates, but you'll only find empty halls and echoes. I think of a man who believed love is never giving up. His partner had fallen into a deep depression and had asked for space, for time alone to heal. The man interpreted never give up as never leave their side. He called constantly, showed up unannounced with gifts, offered endless pep talks. He thought he was being loyal. His partner, overwhelmed, finally said, "You're not giving up feels like a siege. I asked for space to breathe, and you are taking up all the oxygen in the room. To heal, I need to feel I can be alone without being abandoned. Your presence feels like pressure, not love." It was a devastating lesson. He learned that sometimes, not giving up on the person means giving up on your method. It means respecting their requested distance, trusting in their journey, and loving them from afar without demands. That requires a different, more mature kind of strength. Examine the scripts you carry. Are they leading you to water, or are they keeping you chained to an empty well? Sometimes, the most loving action is to stop the fight, lay down your weapons of expectation, and walk away with your heart intact, leaving the door open but no longer standing guard in the rain. Let's end this part with a meditation on gravity. In the physical world, gravity is a law. What is released falls. What is unsupported drops. We cannot argue with it. We build our structures in accordance with it. Emotional gravity is just as real, but we often pretend it isn't. The gravity of a one-sided relationship pulls you down. It drains your energy, your joy, your light. You can try to defy it, with hope, with effort, with sheer will. You can build scaffolding of justification, tie yourself to the person with ropes of memory. But it is exhausting. You are fighting a fundamental law: what is not mutually supported, falls. Letting go is not a failure of will. It is an act of wisdom. It is acknowledging gravity. You are simply releasing the strain of holding something up alone. When you let go, it falls. And you are left standing, lighter, no longer fighting the pull of the earth. The ache of release is the ache of muscles that have been clenched for too long, finally allowed to rest. It is the honest pain of reality replacing the exhausting pain of resistance. So feel the pull tonight. Not with fear, but with curiosity. Where in your life are you fighting emotional gravity? Where are you holding up an entire connection by yourself? See if you can, even just in your mind's eye, soften your grip. Imagine the scaffolding dissolving. Not with drama, but with a sigh. Feel the weight leave your shoulders. The thing may fall, but you remain. On solid ground. Under an open sky. And the law of gravity, once accepted, becomes not your enemy, but the force that keeps you rooted, real, and ready for what is truly meant to rest solidly in your hands. We will continue. Let the sound of these words be like a soft breeze, touching you lightly, asking nothing in return. Tonight, let's explore a landscape within you that is often overlooked, the fertile ground of what remains when something ends. We often speak of emptiness after a loss as if it is a void, a nothingness to be feared. We rush to fill it with noise, with new people, with frantic activity, with anything to avoid the silent echo. But what if that emptiness is not a vacuum? What if it is the most fertile soil you will ever know? After a forest fire, the ground is blackened, seemingly dead. But that ash is rich with nutrients. The open canopy allows sunlight to reach the earth for the first time in decades. And from that scorched openness, new life emerges, different, often more resilient and diverse than what came before. The fire was an ending. The ash is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of a new chapter of growth. When a relationship ends, when a hope dissolves, it can feel like a fire has swept through the landscape of your heart. All the familiar landmarks are gone. The comfortable shade of companionship is burned away. It is painful, raw, exposed. But this is precisely the condition for profound new growth. The empty space is now cleared of the old underbrush of compromise, the tangled vines of expectation, the towering trees of dependency that blocked your own light. For the first time, you can see your own ground. You can feel the sun of your own awareness directly on the soil of your soul. This is the time to plant seeds you never dared to before. Seeds of solo adventures, of forgotten passions, of quiet self-discovery, of boundaries that will become strong saplings. The emptiness is not your enemy. It is your cleared garden. I think of a woman whose long-term career, which she had tied to her identity, ended abruptly. For months, she felt like a ghost, purposeless, empty. She called it her ash period. One day, staring at the literal empty plot of dirt behind her house, she had a whim. She bought a packet of wildflower seeds, the kind that are a chaotic mix of whatever grows. She scattered them with no plan, almost in defiance of her need for order. She watered it when she remembered. Weeks later, a riot of color exploded. Unplanned, untamed, breathtakingly beautiful. Bees and butterflies came. As she watched that chaotic, vibrant life, she saw a metaphor for her own soul. The rigid, single-crop field of her old career was gone. Now, the untended ground of her time was yielding a wild, unexpected variety of interests, connections, and small joys she'd never have planned. The emptiness had been the necessary condition for this unpredictable, glorious blooming. So, if you are in the ashes, do not despise them. Do not run from the quiet. Sit in it. Feel the strange openness. What tiny, brave seed wants to be planted there? It doesn't have to be a grand new life plan. It can be the seed of taking a pottery class, of writing one true sentence in a journal, of walking a new path every morning. Plant it. Water it with your attention. The fertility is already in the ground. This leads us to examine a common ghost, the ghost of potential. This is perhaps the most haunting specter in matters of the heart. We aren't in love with the person as they are. We are in love with the person as they could be. The ghost of their potential is charismatic, perfect, tailored exactly to our dreams. It whispers promises of a future where they are healed, ready, committed, and perfectly attuned to us. Meanwhile, the living, breathing human in front of us is inconsistent, confused, or unavailable. But we choose the ghost over the human. We mourn the ghost when the human walks away. We are in a relationship with a phantom, and we call it hope. Buddhist teaching is fiercely grounded in what is, not in what could be. It asks you to see the actual tree, not the tree you wish would grow from the seed. To be in a relationship with potential is to be in a relationship with your own imagination. It is a form of self-deception that inevitably leads to suffering, because reality will always, eventually, assert itself. The human will act like a human, not a ghost. I knew a man who fell for a woman who was emotionally walled off, a project, as he called it. He saw her potential for warmth, for vulnerability. He poured love, patience, and therapy book recommendations into her. He was in love with the vision of the healed, open woman she could become. She took his love but remained behind her walls. When she left for someone else who demanded nothing of her, he was shattered. Not because he lost her, but because he lost the project, the ghost of potential he had invested his identity in. In his grief, a friend asked him, "Did you ever actually like the woman who was there? The one who was guarded and a bit cold?" He was stunned into silence. He realized he hadn't. He had been a gardener obsessed with a blueprint, trying to force a cactus to become an orchid, and then heartbroken when it remained a cactus. His healing began when he started to appreciate cacti for their own resilient, spiky beauty, and stopped trying to grow orchids in desert sand. See clearly. Are you loving a person, or a phantom? Are you committed to reality, or to a renovation plan you've drafted for someone else's soul? Let the ghost of potential go. It is a weightless thing, but it can chain you to a heavy disappointment. Meet what is. If you can love what is, that is real. If you can only love what could be, you are alone in a room with your own dreams. Now, let's contemplate the metaphor of the anchor and the boat. Your sense of self, your peace, is the boat. In calm waters, it's easy to feel steady. Relationships, connections, passions, these can be like anchors. A good anchor, dropped in a healthy harbor, keeps the boat safe during storms. It provides stability. But what happens if you drop your anchor not into solid ground, but onto another boat? You are tethered to something that is itself adrift, subject to its own winds and currents. When that other boat moves, you are jerked violently. If it sinks, you are dragged down. Your stability is outsourced to something inherently unstable. This is what happens when you make another person your primary anchor. When your mood, your worth, your day is dictated by their attention or absence. You have hooked your boat to a vessel you cannot control. The tossing and turning is inevitable. The wisdom is to lower your own anchor, to find your own solid ground within. Your values, your practices, your connection to something larger than any human relationship, be it nature, creativity, spirit, or simple awareness. This inner anchor holds fast. From this stability, you can then visit other boats. You can tie up alongside them for a time, share the view, enjoy the company. But your security is not dependent on their hull. If they drift away, you are not capsized. You are still anchored in your own harbor. You feel the loss, yes. A friendly boat has sailed on. But you are not drowning. You are simply, still, secure, watching the horizon. A sailor taught me this lesson not with words, but with action. We were on his small craft when a squall came up fast. The wind whipped, the rain lashed. I panicked, looking around for something to cling to. He was utterly calm. He didn't look at the other boats scrambling. He focused entirely on his own instruments, on adjusting his sails, on feeling the tug of his own anchor line. "I can't control the storm," he shouted over the wind. "I can only trust my anchor and my skill." His calm was contagious. We rode out the storm, bobbing violently but fundamentally secure. Afterward, he said, "On land, people anchor their happiness to other people's weather. Out here, you learn quickly, your own ground is all you've got. Your inner work is the dropping of your own anchor. It is the most important voyage you will ever take." This brings us to a tender point, the difference between grieving and rotting. Grieving is a process. It is active. It has stages. Denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and eventually, integration. It is like the body's immune response to an emotional wound. It inflames, it aches, it cleanses, it rebuilds. Grieving moves. It may move in circles, but it moves. Rotting is stagnant. It is when grief becomes a home, not a process. It is when you build a shrine to the loss and move in. You tell the same story on a loop. You collect relics of the past. You refuse fresh air. You become a custodian of a museum that no one visits but you. Rotting smells of resentment, self-pity, and rigid identity. I am the one who was left. It does not lead to new life. It leads to a slow, soul-level decay. It is crucial to know which you are doing. Are you feeling the raw, changing pain of grief? Or are you curating your pain, polishing it, making it your personality? One is a river, sometimes frozen, sometimes flooding, but always headed toward the sea. The other is a swamp. A man who lost his spouse to illness shared this distinction with me. The first year, he grieved. He wept, he raged at the universe, he felt lost. It was agony, but it was alive. In the second year, he noticed a shift. He was no longer grieving, he was building a fortress of his sorrow. He'd tell the same stories with the same tragic inflection. Friends began to gently distance themselves. He realized he was in danger of rotting, of letting his love for her become a tomb for himself. He made a difficult decision. He began to volunteer, using his experience to help others in early grief. He didn't stop loving her. He didn't stop feeling sad. But he moved his love from the static shrine into the flowing river of service. In helping others, his grief integrated into his life. It stopped being the whole house and became a sacred room within a larger, living home. If you are holding on to a loss, ask yourself, am I grieving, or am I rotting? Is this pain a process, or a possession? Honor the grief. Let it flow. But do not build a house in the swamp. Your life is meant to be a garden, not a mausoleum. Finally, let's sit with the idea of the unfinished symphony. We believe relationships, careers, life paths, should be like a classical symphony, a structured composition with a clear beginning, middle, and a grand, resolved finale. When something ends prematurely, without our chosen resolution, it feels like a symphony cut off in the middle of a movement. Unfinished. A failure. But what if your life is not a classical symphony? What if it is more like jazz? Jazz is built on improvisation. A theme is introduced, musicians play with it, it evolves, it goes in unexpected directions. Sometimes a soloist takes the melody far away from where it began. Sometimes the band falls silent for a beat. The end of a piece isn't a resolving chord, it's often a mutual, felt decision to stop, leaving the last note hanging in the air, implying more music to come. The beauty is in the aliveness, the responsiveness, the courage to play the next note without knowing exactly where it will lead. A relationship that ends is not an unfinished symphony. It is a completed jazz piece. It had its theme. You improvised together for a time. Perhaps the improvisation grew discordant, or one player needed to lay out. The piece reached a natural ending point. It may not have been the ending you scored in your head, but it was the ending that emerged from the real-time interplay of two souls. To call it unfinished is to disrespect the actual music that was made. It was complete in its own way. Learn to appreciate jazz. To value the spontaneous melody you co-created, even if it didn't last for decades. To hear the beauty in the notes that were played, not just mourn the ones you imagined would follow. Your life is a series of jazz pieces, not one grand, pre-written opus. The next piece is always about to begin. The next theme is waiting in the silence. Listen for it. And when you feel the impulse, pick up your instrument and play the next brave, true note. We are nearing the close of our journey together here. In our final part, we will integrate these understandings into a single, actionable piece. Let us arrive here together, not as seekers, but as witnesses to what has always been present. We have journeyed through metaphors of locks and gardens, storms and sanctuaries, anchors and jazz. Now, let us integrate. Let us speak of the most practical magic of all, the art of coming home to yourself. It begins with a simple, revolutionary shift. For so long, your inner compass may have been calibrated to point outward. It spun toward the phone, waiting for a notification. It quivered toward another person's mood, trying to find true north in their smile or frown. It sought its coordinates in words of praise or silence of absence. This outward calibration is the source of endless seasickness. You are trying to navigate the vast ocean of your own life using a compass that is magnetized to shifting, external poles. The work. The gentle, lifelong practice, is to recalibrate the compass so its needle points steadily inward. to the quiet pulse of your own heartbeat, to the steady rhythm of your own breath, to the felt sense of I am that exists before any story, any role, any relationship. This inward point is your true north. It does not waver. It is not subject to another's weather. From this fixed point, you can navigate anything. Rejection becomes a wind from the east, not a tidal wave that drowns you. Loneliness becomes a clear patch of sky, not an endless night. You can consult your compass and say, this situation is pulling me off course. I will adjust my sails, but my north remains here, within. How do you do this? Not with grand gestures, but with micro moments of return. It is the breath you take when anxiety rises, a deliberate, conscious inhale and exhale that says, I am here, in this body. It is the pause you insert between a triggering event and your reaction. A space where you remember you are the observer, not the storm. It is the nightly ritual of placing a hand on your heart and silently acknowledging, whatever happened today, I am still here. I am still whole. These are the tiny turns of the dial that, over time, recalibrate your entire instrument. I remember a teacher who kept a small, ordinary stone on his desk. When asked about it, he said, "This is my compass." He explained that whenever he felt swept into confusion or worry, he would pick up the stone. He'd feel its weight, its texture, its temperature. The stone is always exactly what it is, he said. It is not wondering if it's a good enough stone. It is not worrying about tomorrow. It is fully, completely, a stone in this moment. Holding it reminds me that beneath all my thinking, I, too, am a being, just being here. That is my true north. The stone was just a prop. The return was the practice. You don't need a stone. You have your breath. You have the sensation of your feet on the floor. You have the hearing of these words. These are all anchors to the present, to the inner ground. This leads us to the final, and perhaps most liberating, understanding. You are not here to complete anyone, and no one is here to complete you. The myth of completion through another is a beautiful, painful fairy tale. It pictures us as broken fragments, scanning the world for the piece that will make us whole. When we find someone who seems to fit our jagged edges, we believe we have found the one. But this dooms the relationship from the start. It places an impossible burden on the other person to be your missing piece, to stop up your emptiness, to be the architect of your wholeness. And when they fail, as all humans must, because they are a whole person, not a piece, we feel betrayed, incomplete once more. The truth is, you are not a fragment. You are a complete mosaic already. All the pieces, the joy, the sorrow, the strength, the vulnerability, the past, the potential, are already there within you. They may be scattered, some pieces may be dusty or turned face down, but the mosaic is whole. Your work is not to find a missing piece from outside. Your work is to turn over the pieces within, to arrange them with compassion, to see the beautiful, unique picture they already form. You are the mosaic and the mosaic maker. When you relate from this place of felt wholeness, everything changes. You no longer enter relationships with a hungry emptiness, hoping to be fed. You enter with a shared abundance, hoping to celebrate. You are not two half circles locking together to form a wobbly whole. You are two complete circles overlapping, creating a rich, dynamic area of shared experience, while each remains perfectly intact on their own. This is the only foundation for a love that is free, not fearful. A couple, married for decades and widely admired, once shared the secret of their longevity. They said, "We never believed we completed each other. That would have been a terrible pressure. We were, and are, two fiercely independent people who choose each other, every day. We are companions on parallel paths, sometimes walking close, sometimes far apart, but always heading in the same general direction. Our love is the permission we give each other to be fully themselves, not the glue that holds broken parts together. That is the mature, enduring love that becomes possible when you have first come home to your own completeness." So, what do you do with the longing, the ache for connection? You honor it. You recognize it as part of your beautiful mosaic, the piece that represents your capacity for love, for intimacy. You do not let that piece dominate the entire picture. You place it respectfully among the other pieces, your piece for self-respect, your piece for peace, your piece for independence. You let the longing be a quiet song in your heart, not a deafening demand that ruins the symphony. And finally, we arrive at the doorstep of action. Wisdom that is not embodied is just philosophy. Peace that is not practiced is just a word. So, let's speak of the most potent action available to you, the action of inward movement. When the old pull arises, to check their social media, to reread old messages, to craft a text designed to elicit a response, you have a choice. That is the critical moment. In that moment, instead of the outward movement of the hand toward the phone, practice an inward movement. Turn the hand around. Place it on your own chest. Feel your heartbeat. Take 3 conscious breaths. Ask inwardly, what do I need right now? Is it reassurance? Comfort? Distraction? Then, give that to yourself. Reassure yourself, I am okay in this moment. Comfort yourself with a warm drink, a soft blanket. Choose a healthy distraction, a walk, a book, a piece of music. This inward movement is a reprogramming. It breaks the addictive circuit of seeking validation externally and begins to build the neural pathway of self-source. This is not easy. The old pull is strong, wired by habit and emotion. You will fail sometimes. That's okay. Each time you choose the inward movement, even if it's only 1 time out of 10, you are strengthening a new muscle. You are telling your nervous system, my safety, my peace, my worth, these come from me. I will leave you with one last story, a parable of sorts. There was once a keeper of a lighthouse. His job was to keep the great lamp lit, to warn ships of the rocky coast. He took immense pride in his work. One stormy night, a ship was thrown against the rocks and sank, just beyond the reach of his light. The keeper was devastated. He fell into a deep despair. He believed his light had failed, that he was a failure. He stopped maintaining the lens. He let the lamp grow dim. He spent his days staring at the spot where the ship had gone down, mourning. One evening, an old sailor, a survivor of many storms, came to the lighthouse. He saw the dim light and the despairing keeper. He listened to the keeper's guilt. Then he said, "The purpose of the light is not to control the sea. You cannot calm the waves with a beam. The purpose of the light is simply to be lit. To be a clear, unwavering point of reference in the darkness. Some ships will see it and steer clear. Some, lost in their own storms, will not. That is not the fault of the light. Your duty is not to prevent every shipwreck. Your duty is to keep your own light clean, bright, and burning. That is all you can do. And that is enough. The keeper understood. He cleaned the lens. He lit the lamp. And he stood watch again, not as a guarantor of safety for all, but as a steady keeper of his own flame. You are the keeper of your own light. Your clarity, your peace, your worth, this is your light. Your duty is not to make everyone see it, to make everyone choose it, to use it to guide others safely to your shores. Your duty is simply to keep it lit. To tend it. To protect it from the winds of doubt and the salt corrosion of neglect. When your light is bright, you become a beacon, not just for others, but for yourself. You can navigate your own darkness. You can see your own shores. And from that place of radiant self-keeping, you will naturally attract those who are drawn to true light, and you will have the discernment to recognize those who are blind to it. The journey we have shared in these moments is now complete. You came here with questions, perhaps with a quiet ache. You leave with a simple, profound reminder: you are the sanctuary. You are the anchor. You are the compass. You are the mosaic. You are the keeper of the light. No one else can give you this. No one else can take it away. Thank you for resting here, in Monk's Temple. May the light you carry within burn steadily, gently, and without need for permission, for all the days to come. Good night, and be at peace.